In this FRQ practice video, which covers question 3 from the 2024 AP Bio exam, we'll answer some questions about types of membrane transport, about gene expression, and we'll look at some really interesting experimental design questions related to how gene expression changes over time. Are you ready for AP Bio Review? To investigate whether red blood cells of animals lose the ability to take in glucose from their environment as they age, scientists collected red blood cells from guinea pigs that ranged in age from 1 day old to 7 months old. Scientists incubated an equal number of red blood cells in separate culture dishes that contained a 300 nanomole solution of radioactively labeled glucose. The amount of radioactively labeled glucose present inside the red blood cells of each group was measured over time. Let's take all that text and try and visualize what it means and what it looks like. The first thing that you read about was radioactively labeled glucose, and that is glucose in which the carbon atoms have a radioactive isotope of carbon, carbon-14, that puts out a certain kind of energy, and that allows for scientists to track whether the glucose is outside the cells, as we see here, or whether it's moved into the cells. So it allows for tracking the diffusion rate of glucose, and as we'll see, that's the dependent variable. That's the measured outcome of the experiment. We also talked about red blood cells from guinea pigs of different ages, and that's exactly what it sounds like. The scientists are going to take blood from a 1 day old guinea pig, a 1 month old guinea pig, all the way up to 7 months, and that will allow there to be another variable, which is age, and that's going to serve as the independent variable in this experiment. Now, despite all of that, the first thing that you have to answer in this question is something that you probably could have answered directly without having read the question, which is to describe a difference between passive transport and active transport. Write out your answer, and then I'll show you how I answered the question. Here's the answer. I included a diagram for explanatory purposes. You just have to have the answer. In passive transport, substances diffuse down their concentration gradient without any energy expenditure on the part of the cell, and in active transport, substances move up their concentration gradient, requiring the cell to expend energy. If you look at your scoring guide, which I encourage you to download, you'll see that the answer could be quite compact and you didn't need to write everything that I wrote here. Studying past FRQs is a great way to get ready for this year's FRQs, but it's really hard to evaluate the quality of your own answers, even using the scoring guides that the College Board provides. That's why we created enhanced FRQs with AI feedback on learn-biology.com. We'll give you immediate feedback on the quality of your answers for dozens of FRQs. I'll tell you more later. Justify why the scientists used an equal number of red blood cells in each culture dish as a control. Go ahead and respond, and then you can see the answer. The answer is to make a comparison of glucose rates between cells from guinea pigs of different ages. They had to keep the number of cells in each dish constant. You weren't required to explain or elaborate, but here's an explanation just so that you can understand the answer. The dependent variable in this experiment is how much glucose moves into a red blood cell and how this changes as the age of the cell donor increases. That's the independent variable. This will be measured through the amount of radioactivity that's inside the cells. To make a valid comparison across ages, the number of cells in each culture dish needs to be kept constant. Just think about this. If there were 5 billion cells in this dish, and you're measuring the amount of radioactivity inside the cells, and there's only 1 billion in this dish, that's not a valid comparison. So, in order to make the comparison across ages valid, they needed to make sure that there's the same number of cells in each culture dish. Question 3, Part C. Glucose transporters are required for the facilitated diffusion of glucose into red blood cells. The scientists claim that the expression of the gene encoding these transporters decreases as guinea pigs age. If the scientists' claim is supported by experimental data, predict the effect of increased age on the amount of radioactively labeled glucose present inside the cells of each group. Go ahead, write your answer, then hit play to see my answer. If you want to crush it on this year's AP Bio exam, then you're going to have to write great responses on the FRQ portion of the exam. It's half of your score. Where can you learn how to do that? On learn-biology.com with our enhanced practice FRQs. You read a prompt, you type in your response. We give you feedback telling you about your answer's strengths and weaknesses. If you need help, you can ask for a hint. If you're really stuck, you can study a sample answer. We have dozens of practice FRQs, and this is the kind of practice and feedback that'll lead you to crush it on this year's AP Bio exam. So here's your plan. Go to learn-biology.com, sign up, use our enhanced practice FRQs to get the practice you need to succeed. Before I show you the answer, let's do some background visualization of what's happening in this question. The scientists claim the expression of the gene encoding these transporters decreases as guinea pigs age. What's gene expression? Gene expression is this over here. It's DNA being transcribed into RNA. That's what always has to happen. And then most of the time, that RNA is going to be translated into protein. Now, if gene expression decreases as the guinea pigs age, then there's going to be less production of RNA and less production of protein. So we can imagine that the red blood cells in a young guinea pig are going to look like this. They're going to have lots of the glucose protein built into their membranes, whereas the red blood cells of an old guinea pig might look like this. They'll have many fewer glucose transporters built into their cell membranes. What we just did on the previous slide essentially tells you the answer. As the age increases, there will be less radioactively labeled glucose inside the cells. Now, what the College Board asks you to do next in question 3D is to justify your prediction in Part C. Go ahead, justify your prediction, and then I'll show you my justification. Our prediction was that as the age of the guinea pigs increases, there will be less radioactively labeled glucose inside their red blood cells. Here's the justification. With less expression of the gene encoding the glucose transporters, there will be fewer transporters, so fewer glucose molecules will be able to diffuse into the cell. Again, this is what the red blood cells of an old guinea pig are going to look like. Relatively few transporters because there's less gene expression, as opposed to the red blood cells of a young guinea pig where there are going to be more glucose transporters. With more transporters, it's going to be easier for the glucose to get into the cell. That's why there'll be more glucose getting into the cells here than there will be over here. That'll correspond to the age of the guinea pigs. To become a great FRQ writer, you're going to need lots of practice and get lots of feedback, and you can do that at learn-biology.com with our enhanced practice FRQs with AI feedback. So your next move for success is to go to learn-biology.com, sign up, start working with our enhanced practice FRQs, and then watch this next video.